Hey everybody, welcome back and happy Thursday. It is great to see all of you. We have a special guest joining us today. We're going to be talking about how to get involved in disaster relief. So everyone meet Robert Wink, who is at this point a friend and also still a project manager, right, at FEMA.
Yes, I am.
Okay. So we're super excited to have him. We're going to pick his brain. I encourage you, if you're not watching on YouTube, please do come over to YouTube so that we can see all of your questions in the chat. So we'll go ahead and get kicked off, guys. It was kind of funny. One of the first conversations that Robert and I ever had, we were planning for that Gavology webinar, and we had sort of a mutual exchange about how contractors always wait until the hurricane to decide that they want to get involved in the disaster relief effort. So I wanted to definitely make sure that we talked a little bit more today about, what are the phases of disaster, when and how you should get involved, and then also kind of dabble into a little bit more about how FEMA does business. So tell me, Robert, what typically would you recommend for a new small business? We're going to start with the new small businesses because
Okay.
I know, FEMA operates with advanced contracts, but when there's a disaster, it's not just FEMA. It is your state and local agencies too that get a flow down of that money, right? So talk to
Yes.
us just a little bit about what that looks like from the agency perspective when that happens. And
So when it comes to FEMA, a disaster is declared. And so just so everyone knows, I used to be a contracting officer at FEMA and a couple other agencies as well. So I understand both sides. Project management and the contracting side. So this is the closest you're going to get to seeing all sides and actually fully understanding it, unless you know somebody else. So what I'll say is when a disaster is declared, usually it is a city, county, they go through the regular process, they nominate, goes all the way up to the state approves it, and then it goes over to the region, like Region 6 in Texas will push it over to, to the president's office. They'll approve it and it works its way back down. That's the simple way of putting it. However, not every disaster is considered declared or will be declared by the president. So what I tell everybody is when it comes to the disaster dollars, you always want to look at your city, your county, your state, if they have a procurement going, because some money is trickled down. They're in forms of grants. But then you also want to look at the state level and then the federal level to stay in just one lane of, hey, I'm waiting for FEMA contracts is not the way to go because there's too many other approaches that are coming. And being a new business into government contracts, I would recommend don't be afraid to be a subcontractor because you want to work with a client that understands the contract administration side that occurs. This isn't like your commercial world where you're sitting there going, oh, I'm going to go remove debris. No, it's not that easy. Yeah, you may go remove debris and it's done. However, if the government's going to go, hey, do you have permits in place? Which place are you dropping off at? Have your employees been, depending on the contract, have they been trained in privacy training, which is like an hour long, or training in OPSEC? You have roughly about 4 hours in training that may need to be done per contract. Did you price for that? And some of those contracts have subcontract flow down, which means you have to do it anyway. But in my experience, nobody ever asked for those documents unless I'm the contracting officer or at that time now being project management and a COR, I always ask for those documents. So that's what I would recommend looking out for. And go ahead. Right back to you, Ashley.
thank you. I know one thing that's sort of new between the time, I know we covered this back in 2021 and again now, and one thing that's changed between now and then is that FEMA has an actual process for engagement now. They have a form on their website that you can submit your information, especially, if you are interested in a specific disaster. So they have made a little bit more of an effort that I'm pleased to say I've seen in recent years. Where that information goes, I have no idea.
Bingo. I'm going to tell you on that one. So this is what happens. Disaster kicks off. We have roughly about 100 contracts or strategic sourcing contracts already in place. It's like ambulance services and a couple others. And I have that list. So, but when a disaster hits in the first 150 days, they usually go to those. And then after the 150 days, you compete for small business in the local area set aside. Sometimes they'll do it before the 150 days. So when someone goes, "Oh, I put my information in," I laugh, because what you do is you have somebody that's a program analyst or a project manager on a lower level goes, "Oh, we need fencing." And they're going to go search sam.gov, or DSBS to see if there's somebody there. But if they're not experienced, they're going to Google, and that just becomes a whole nother nightmare. So definitely be in DSBS, definitely have your SAM completed as well. And that is the best way to start.
Natasha, you have any questions? Because I got one more if you're fresh out.
I do have a question. So if I wanted to get into disaster relief, what different components are there when it comes to disaster relief? I've seen like grant management services. I've seen tons of support when it comes to relief. What does that look like? And is that more in the FEMA section, or is that more like city and states and locals? How does that work?
So with grants, FEMA gives a grant to a declared disaster, and it gets trickled from the state and it trickles down. I have a friend that's her expertise is grants. If you can make that an expertise, I 100% recommend it. There's more money in grants going to the state and the county and the cities. Contracts. Grants is huge. Definitely recommend that, because why just pursue federal when there's other things? If you're looking at like the housing mission, that's a federal mission. We've done state missions. They didn't work out the best because you're trying to train an entity, a state, on how to do it, and they've never done it. And so there's a couple disasters I won't mention that came up, and it had transition back to FEMA. But that's just business. You give them an opportunity, see if they can handle it. If they can't, that's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all here for the survivors, the applicants, the occupants, the people that have been devastated by the disaster, to make them whole the best within the laws that are done through Congress to say what we can and can't.
Very nice. Okay. I think I have one more question.
Go ahead.
So when you're registering in SAM, it automatically asks you if you are, willing to be part of the disaster response and things of that magnitude. Can you explain, when people check that box, what does that mean for them?
All right. So what it is that you check this great box, and it's actually FAR Part 26.205. It's called the Disaster Response Registry. And so I've already popped that over in the chat. It breaks it down in sam.gov. And it's a list of potential vendors that are available. Here's the kick. When I was a contracting officer, I was at Region 6 in Denton, Texas. We had our own list, Excel spreadsheet or everything. We can go to sam.gov, pull that, the disaster registry list. The kick is, you're a company in New York and you want to do work in Texas. Let's say Harris County, Houston area has a disaster. Well, you've been in New York, the odds, we're looking at local areas set aside first. So it's the declared counties first, and then it goes to the state, but there has to be, it's a local area set aside determination that that I would write up, go, hey, nothing's local. It goes to the contracting officer, they approve it. That's usually how it works.
That's pretty cool. Okay.
Actually what my question was about was how, the local area preference. And sort of, is that still the case where FEMA will always go to the state in which the disaster is in before they would ever venture out of state?
So yeah, and that's FEMA's pivot to strategic to contracting, the 100 contracts, right? That, for example, the housing mission, that's not local. That they picked I want to say 6 or 7, and they should be repeating that soon. But vendors to support that. Now, the law does say, yes, you can, but I believe it's either the head of agency or the head of contracting can sign off and say, no, we can go this route. So that the local area set aside still does exist. And you're talking about FAR Part 26.206, which I'll post in the chat there for you, where it says, you're supposed to do 50% within the local area if you're a prime contractor outside the area. or you're supposed to hire within. One of the clauses talks about, does 50% of your employees, you as a company, do 50% of your work from that area. So if you're at a Sam and Dunn, and if you're in Sam.gov in New York, and you're in Louisiana doing a disaster, you have to prove to FEMA, you're supposed to prove to FEMA that you have a business there and providing 50% of your work there. I've never dealt with that. I've never seen it. I know it exists. So that's always a good question.
There's an exception to every rule. I've definitely come to learn in my
Well, as long as when I was a contracting officer and even as a project manager, as long as you could write or put a determination saying this is why we're going outside this rule, and you have your layers of approval, you're going to be fine, because you have to look at what's in the best interest of the taxpayer dollar. I'll tell you one disaster I was at. The subcontractor was price gouging. I mean, like, to find an electrician, they're charging $200 to $300 an hour. You're like, no, just put somebody on staff and let's move forward. So, and that's the modification that happened. So you come across with it. Companies will try to price gouge, and if you as a contracting officer cannot determine fair and reasonable, that's when you would sit there and look at going, outside the local area, other counties, or throughout the whole state. And that has happened when I was a contracting officer. I'm gonna say about 30 to 50% of the time I had to do that, because you saw the outrageous increase in price.
Sounds a whole lot like somebody sourcing it and doubling the price and submitting it to you, doesn't it?
Well, listen, man, that's a sensitive subject. No, because there's a lot. Some people call it the middleman theory or middlewoman theory, philosophy that exists. It happens. I'll tell you, when I was at the Bureau of Engraving, we have a facility and we asked for laundry services. Very simple. Well, all these companies around the US said we could do it. I'm like, do you own a facility in Fort Worth? Oh no, we're going to subcontract to the local business that's there. Well, couldn't determine fair and reasonable. I was a contract officer, but we went with a large business. That was the Bureau of Engraving. So that's where you have to have in the government the right input, because we're just people like everybody else. We all make mistakes. We all have human behaviors. That's where they have to sit there and go, do they actually own a building? Do they lease a building? Are they in the local area? I mean, this is a business. And some people don't have that in the government.
Yeah, that's very yes, that's very true. It's kind of very common to either have one side or the other, right? But even with the business acumen, you can kind of you can kind of understand the human on the other side if you know how the acquisition process works. And also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the agency's supplemental rules, right? Because FEMA has different procedures than the VA. VA favors veterans, whereas you just heard Robert say in the instance and use case or the case study that he provided, the small business didn't get the contract, lost the contract to a large business because they didn't have the facility. So, I mean, that's a good use case. You're not going to win them all. And that doesn't mean to stop bidding, but also something else to take into consideration when it comes to FEMA. Robert did mention subcontracting. So I'm going to pop in the chat for you guys the incumbents and the information on the list of FEMA advanced contracts. And you'll notice on that list, they have more than one vendor providing an item in each major geographical area that there's a disaster. So those are kind of extended term length contracts. How long are the advanced contracts now, Robert? Are they 3 years, 5 years?
They get a base in 4 usually. Some will get extended because they put a bridge contract in place because they couldn't do it. There's so many different routes to go on that. But usually it's a base. And now I think 8A, they're only allowing 3 years as a direct award, is the last thing I heard for FEMA anyway.
Okay. That makes sense. And there's also, let me see if this is still up to date too. When you did the webinar in 2021,
Yes.
I took a lot of really good notes.
Thank you.
So I want to check and make sure that the thresholds are still what I have. So back then, supplies was 10,000, services was only 2,500. Has
Yes.
FEMA come up to 35 yet?
That's all still
No.
25.
Mm.
And then 2,000 for construction. Now, when a disaster does happen, FEMA can increase it to 20,000, but that's usually a memo that will come out for the purchase card. And I just posted the strategic sourcing link. This is a public link on DHS. There's nothing private about it. And that's horrible as it says. It was last updated in 2022. So, I mean, hey, that's
Our
what's
government website for you. We're not surprised by the .gov behind
Sounds
it.
about right.
but I
And
mean,
then during a disaster, the SAP increases from 250K up to 750K. Still, that's it.
that's if it's signed off by the head of contracting, they approve that.
Mhm. Okay. So we're talking about, and I'll pop these in the chat too. Here's a question I wanted to ask. Have there been any changes in sort of things that you didn't buy before that now you're having to buy post-COVID? Like new things that have been needed recently that you were like, oh, I don't remember buying that before.
No,
Or
I
is
mean,
it
I
still
think
the same stuff?
we're a business just like everybody else. It's probably the same furniture, the same equipment. Every disaster is the same. We're okay. We got to lease a building. We got to get security in place. We got to get furniture. We got to. It's think of it just like a business. It's just what is the business provide, and once you realize that's the go-to thing. So like a lot of companies will try to, and this is good for your construction, your 8A, your janitorial, grounds maintenance. They all want to go after government contracts. Go look at GSA leases. I'm not saying go, lease it. Find out who owns the lease, which is public information, and go, hey, I can provide this service for you because a lease can stay in place for a year up to 20 years. So, I mean, there's some vendors that will stay in the same area for 10 years because it's the first right of refusal because the owner of the building, the GSA lease, they own it. Totally different set of clauses that go into a contract.
Yeah, and that was one of probably the most recent industries that I have learned because there's not a whole lot of transparency on how GSA leasing even works. And ultimately, GSA is dependent upon the state laws in the real estate industry. So South Carolina, for example, in order to represent a property that you're not the owner of, you do have to be not only a licensed agent and licensed broker, but that does not apply if you're the building owner. You can
Well,
negotiate on
let's
behalf of your own property.
if you own the property, that's the same thing even in real
Right.
estate in Texas. If you own your property, you can negotiate it.
Yeah.
But if you're representing somebody, you have to be a realtor or a broker. And in Texas, for property management, you have to be a broker. And so, and a lot of states do form that way, not every state. So I
Not
know
every
in
state, yeah.
2025, I'm going after my brokerage license to pursue those once I decide to leave the government.
Nice.
And the thing about commercial, though, is that what's the best way to put this? In commercial, you're not part of NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors. You can actually be in Illinois and represent a property in what's it called in Arizona. I mean, commercial is a whole different beast compared to residential.
That's actually very interesting.
I actually have a client who's doing fairly well. She owns a couple of properties. She provides, I guess that there are apartment complexes that she has, that she leases out. People come and stay with her. It's like a home away from home. And she's doing really well with leasing those out, short-term and long-term stays, to the government. So you never really know. You just have to kind of dig into the data and follow the money to the customer that's doing the buying, and you'll be surprised at all the different ways. The government, like Robert said, is just kind of like a business. In your business, you need certain software tools to run your business. You need this vendor, that vendor. You need a CPA. The list goes on. So definitely do your homework. And I also, in addition to property leasing, I'll say, here are some additional items on the list of things that FEMA buys over and over and over again in a disaster. children products, infant, toddler products like diapers and things, plastic sheeting, tarps, blankets, comfort hygiene kits, water, meals, forklift rentals, mobile homes and units, durable medical equipment for those of you in medical products, kits, cargo vans, security guard services, Robert mentioned earlier, generators, cots, joint field office kit. Speaking of generators, I once worked with a client who his entire job was picking up the generator, driving it to the disaster site and hooking it up and going home. That was literally his job. He enjoyed that job very much and got paid well for doing it. Joint field office kit, leased copiers, leased generators, recreational vehicles, consumable medical supplies and kits, office supplies, shredding bins, portable toilets, sign language. That one I definitely was a little surprised to
Yeah,
see.
I didn't see
Yeah.
that one. Okay, all right.
Temporary
Actually, no,
labor,
there is
janitorial.
contracts. There is
What is it?
contracts for language services.
Yeah.
Um,
Ah.
the big one is actually if you have a marketing company or multimedia company. I was just on a source selection for Hermit's Peak, and the vendor was chosen, and we did that for COVID. I mean, there's no the government, you name it, we buy it. Just about buy it. I mean, so. But everything's out there. It's just you got the thing is like, okay, so I'm in Dallas.
Mhm.
The reason, and this is what I tell people, other small businesses that I've talked to. I'm like, there's no reason for me to go chase work in Virginia. Dallas is freaking huge. We have a bunch of multiple agencies.
Mhm.
There's San Antonio, there's Fort Hood, or sorry, Fort Cavazos now, and there's a couple other bases. My thing is start locally where you're at and then grow from there. If you're a service-based industry. Like you said, make sure you have your taxes done right, your accountant, make sure they know, because, just because you live and work in Texas, that's where your business is at. But what if you want to go do work in Nebraska? Do you have the franchise tax up there, the sales tax? Or are you considered a, what's the state called? A foreign business entity is what they call it. And so do you have that license? Do they, do you have the permitting for construction? These are all things you have to look at. Your taxes are different. And so just something I tell everybody, you make sure you want to know your numbers before you start jumping into other states. Understand the payroll, understand there is a difference.
Yeah, there definitely is. That's a really good point, and not one that's actually brought up very often. So thank you for that.
No problem. The other thing is your subcontracting contracts are totally different. And what I mean by that is in Texas, if I subcontract to somebody and they have a homestead and I try to go sue them, I'm not getting shit because they got a homestead. I can't take their property. Other states you can. So you want to know what the rules of the business is and the contracts of what you can get based on liability, or if a company reneges or decides to breach their contract. I would recommend asking for a bond or a insurance to make sure they have insurance you can do a claim against.
And expect the same thing to be asked of you. I know
Oh,
construction,
100%.
you certainly have to be bonded in construction. Well, the rules state by state can vary. So I definitely can concur with that. Start with your local area and sort of branch out. And Tasha, you were going to say something? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. And my question had nothing to do with any of this. I had I just really wanted to kind of generalize it and just say and start up the topic of what do we feel is some of the biggest challenges that FEMA's facing going forward, and what small businesses can do to be a part of that change and solution, and overall, what are the goals going forward for FEMA that we should definitely be aware of and kind of, focus on.
Well, see, that's a good question because every disaster is going to be a little bit different. You got political climates, everything's gonna be different. I mean, and the magnitude of it, it's different. So the best thing that a business can do is don't wait for a FEMA contract. Do your job. Go. If you do printers and copiers, that's your piece. That's what you go do. And if the opportunity becomes available, then go attack it. Go do it. Go attempt. But to sit there and wait for it to come, it's gonna walk right past you. There's too much going on. But I mean, the biggest thing is and you'll know when a disaster. You can go to the FEMA webpage actually. Let's see here. There's a FEMA declared disasters. Let's see by state. And they actually do newsletters of when they actually are declared. So if you see a disaster is coming potentially, you'll hear it in the news. The first question is, where are you at? And then what businesses do you know in that area? Do you know somebody that you can have out? That's how everybody all the time. You don't always have to perform. You could be a company that finances a small business in that area. That's, or you could provide contract management or some type of back end services, or just there's so many different ways to go after it. You have to have the imagination to go do it. And so I just dropped in the chat as well the FEMA disaster declarations. So if people want to look that up, they can.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pop that into the comments.
This is nice. Oh, look at that one.
There we go. Here come the disaster declarations. And if on your SAM registration you did elect to be listed in the disaster response registry, you also do get notified via email when the federal government declares a disaster. Question about sourcing, Robert. So I know recently you were working on a couple of contracts, and it seemed, and this could have just been my perception, but it seemed like maybe there was low participation. And I'm just wondering, like, was that an isolated situation? Is it becoming harder to find small businesses?
Actually, it's hit and miss. I'm gonna tell you why. It's hit and miss because it comes down to location, and then does the individual saying, "I need this," and the government understand that local area? What I mean by that is they'll sit there and say, "Oh, we need copiers for 9 months." Well, since COVID, from my understanding, the multifunctional device copier industry has completely changed, where they used to have a bunch available and they would just get some out. We can do 9 months. Now they're wanting the government, from my experience, either to aid buy them or lease them long term over 5 years. Well, that changes everything. And so that's one thing I'm noticing in industry that's changed. And that's just personal experience because I've worked on some of those. Like depending on where you're at, security's hard to get. You'll have to buy per diem and different things like that. So I mean, it just comes down to location. Like I'll tell you, in Hermit's Peak, finding facilities was very hard because there wasn't a lot to choose. And then if there was, what's the price? We had to put money in to fix it. Because you got to think, basically, the best way to look at disasters is FEMA comes in and sets up an office. When they set up that office, it's anywhere from usually 30 to 150 days. That's the initial onset of a disaster, your response. And then you go into what's your recovery side of it. And recovery, that depends. Now, when you start seeing long-term recovery, so they'll develop what's called an LRO, long-term recovery office. We've been in Austin, Texas, since Hurricane Harvey. We've been in Louisiana, Baton Rouge, since Katrina. We still have that same office. So those are your long-term recovery offices. And so what happens is a disaster happens, and we know, oh, this is going to be longer than normal. They go, we're going to look now, because what happens is disaster happens, you deploy people that are in FEMA's cores, you deploy your reservists, and they're like, oh, let's start getting local hires. Once you see local hires getting posted, that's when you know it's probably going to turn into maybe a longer term office. And then you're going to start seeing what's called PENs or USA jobs get posted in that area.
It's a gem of information.
Then when you see that, it's going to be a long term.
That's a gem of information, guys. I hope you're taking notes here.
But that's strategic level thinking. That's so you gotta think FEMA goes there to start. You're there. FEMA initially starting a business, then shuts the business down. Sometimes that business goes longer. And so, like, I mean, even though we still have the same building since Katrina, we're not working Katrina active that I'm aware of. But we are working a couple of disasters in Louisiana. I mean, I was there recently for about 6-7 months, working some housing missions. Housing missions are supposed to be 18 months. That's it. Some have turned into 3 to 4 years. But that's between FEMA and the state to discuss that in the counties and the local cities. So it's interesting to see how that all impacts.
I think what's unique about FEMA is there's just the, I guess not FEMA, but the emergency management space. There's just so many moving wheels, and there's so many ways to engage. What the only thing, if you take nothing else away from this session, The only thing that you want to be sure to remember is don't wait for the disaster to get started, right? If you're not registered in SAM, get registered in SAM. Check your little box for disaster relief. Now, and the last question in closing, when you are sourcing, let's say word hits the street, there's a need, and you do your market research as you have to. You're looking, you said in SAM and in DSVS. Are you looking only for people that are in disaster response, or are you looking for any small business that's in the area that can do it?
Actually, do you wanna play a game? You want me to show you
I
how I
love
do it?
games. Yeah.
All right. So what I need you to do is go to DSVS. I'm gonna send you that link.
Here, I can activate screen share, or I can share, whichever
No,
works.
sure, because it's gonna be slower on my end.
Okay. I'll go.
So this is how I do it. And this is how I teach my project managers, contracting officer representatives when you're doing local area set aside search. So, and then we're gonna play this game. So
All right, let's
here are
play.
your 2 links. All right. So which link did we want to do first? Let's go to a disaster. Go to that FEMA disaster site I sent you by location. Click that one.
Hold on 1 second. Where's the chat? It moved on me. Oh, okay. Oh,
So I want you to click that link first. I want you to go to the disaster link first.
wait, that's the link that it brought me to.
There should be
The one above it?
no. That's ESF. I'll repost it.
This is the
Nope.
link that
Nope. I just resent it to you. Actually, no, no, that's the wrong one. Let's see here.
went to the same place.
I was like, I know this site.
Yes.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time on that site.
Oh, I'm familiar with this one.
Very familiar. We've done
Okay,
a couple
try
of
that one.
sections.
Should be
All
declared.
right.
All right, cool. So what we're gonna do is let's go 2024. So year start 2020. That's all I care about.
Okay.
Let's hit search file. Just search. Hit search. See what comes up. Scroll down. All right. So latest one, Oklahoma, right? April 6th. That looks good. Fire management. Pick it. Let's go with that one.
This one?
So scroll down. Let's see here. Keep going. Click on that disaster areas.
Designated areas?
Yep. Click the disaster areas. All right. Scroll down. All right. See what is this. Keep going down. Because we're looking at individual, because we're gonna have 2 things: individual assistance and public assistance. All right. So I'm gonna teach you this. It says individual assistance, probably going to contracts, just so you're aware. If you see public assistance, that's grants. That's kind of the trick. You may see both in both areas, but majority of the time, if you see an IA mission, you're gonna see contracts probably go into place. If you see public assistance, majority of the time, that's gonna be your grants, because it's a state, local, tribe eligible for assistance in repair of disaster damaged facilities. Okay. So click back. We're gonna pick a different disaster. This one's not a little bit older.
Good information. Okay.
Flooding. Yeah, sure,
Maine?
No, I don't think. Let's go to Maine. Let's go check out.
Let's go check out what's going on in Maine.
Okay, so we got red. Keep going. So that's looks like the whole state. If you click the designated areas, I want to show you a map that has something a little bit different. So I don't want the whole states. Keep going down. Okay, yeah. So actually, this works. This is good. Okay, so as you can see here on this map, there is no designation, which means these are not declared. Those counties. Okay. You see the little brown? That's individual assistance, and they're doing both public assistance. So what I'm going to do is look at those counties first. So let's just pick. I can't even read that. It's so blurry on my screen. What's the big city in one of those counties? The closest.
Washington?
I couldn't tell you.
Kingston?
That's a Natasha question.
Which county you want to look at?
Washington.
Okay, so go Washington County. Okay, so go back to SBA dynamic search.
All right.
So go to Washington. Or sorry, go to Maine. I'm sorry.
Maine, right?
Click Maine.
Maine.
All then click over on the counties.
Oh, there it is.
Ah, there you go. Look up.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
now What we're gonna do is we're just gonna keep scrolling down. We're not gonna do, we don't care about woman owned or any of that stuff right now.
Mhm.
Keep going down. So usually what I do, stop right there. I usually either use a next code or a keyword, right? Now we don't care about that right now. We just want to know what businesses are in that county. So keep scrolling down. There should be a way in here that says, keep going. We're not worried about set asides because it's gonna be small business that show up. Keep going. Keep going. Okay, yeah, we want active only. We don't want anything
Yep.
expired. Get rid of expired stuff. We want active only. Scroll all the way
Mhm.
down. Okay, and this is, you can edit your columns here, which is great.
Add the email
Okay.
address and
We don't want to edit now. We could, that's a whole different class we can give
yeah,
because
I
what I
have one
do
on
is
that.
I usually will pull an Excel and I'll
Mhm.
email all the vendors in that area. Hey, so keep going to the bottom, hit search, just hit search.
So you'll do a quick mail merge, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
So right now there's only 26 businesses in that area. That's it.
Wow.
And that's it. So if I'm looking for construction, in construction, so this is the stuff that, I'll look at, but, I'll use a keyword or a next code to see if they can provide it. And so I use an Excel, I pull all the information, and then I see if they can actually do it. So like if you click on, I mean, you click on any one of those, it doesn't matter.
I'm
So that has
clicking
all
on
the
this one
content.
because they filled out their profile and didn't leave it blank, by the way.
Yeah, keep going down. And so like, you'll see all their set asides. This guy's in a hub
Oh.
zone. Actually, they just got out of the hub zone, so they must have moved. Keep scrolling.
Or the map changed. The map
Or the map
updated
change, that's true too.
not too long
So they're
Yeah.
obviously the construction, keep going, but they don't need bonding. They didn't fill that out, but this is next codes we search for keywords right there, roads, water. Those matter. Those keywords matter. Another route is if you go to usaspending.gov.
It's my favorite.
It's not, that's the other favorite one.
My
My favorite.
All right. Go hit search award data. Yep. We're going to do 2024, FY 2024, 2023, and 2020. Let's go 22. Let's find out. Market research is good for 18 months, but hit award. We don't care about award. Leave all the award stuff. You can hit award type. You can hit it award type if you want. We can do contracts. By the way, you can look for grants too, so you guys know.
Oh, we do actually have someone that had a question about grants. When it comes to grants, are the FEMA grants for small businesses and local residents?
They are usually they're for the state and the state that I'm on. I don't usually deal with grant in a whole different area.
Yeah,
and
the
I
grants
don't-
are for them to obtain funding for disaster relief within the states and localities.
Yeah, so you'd be going to the state to get that to go after those projects. So as you can already say, you're looking at Maine, go hit the county, and you can you don't have to go to county, but you can do Washington if you want. It doesn't matter. If you scroll up, you have place of performance, and then you also have recipient. But if you hit add filter, so we're going to do place of performance.
Yes. Because we
I
all
don't
know that we're gonna want a local.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, just because it's
Leave
local,
recipient location.
We don't
doesn't
have
mean
to
they can
put,
work for 'em.
yeah, we don't have to put the county.
Yeah, we'll just do place of performance.
Yeah.
You've already added it. Go all the way down the bottom and hit search.
All right.
And so we could tell you in that county in the last roughly three years, give or take,
Whoops.
you're going to, there you go. So you see, go back to the main page on that, scroll up, because you want to go to table, just go to table. So you can see there's 186 contracts that's in this area. You can look at the end and start dates, total obligated. This is stuff I would look at, but like go to the place you were in, that you were just at.
Table.
So you go to categories. So I'll go by agency.
Agency?
Go by agency. Reporting agency. Hit sub-agency. Because FEMA is a sub-agency. So there's a big Navy preference up there. FEMA's not even in the top 10.
Nope.
We're not even in here. So
Nope.
this is a prime example I want to show you is that don't wait on FEMA. If you're in that area, you see there's a big presence in the Navy, Department of Agriculture Marketing, and then you can go to your next coach. So this is a rabbit hole that you can go down and get just totally have fun and dating.
Yeah,
I
there's a
mean,
lot of information in here, a lot of it, and how you use it in your strategy, kind of
yes.
depends on what you do. Yeah, but this is the stuff I nerd out over.
So,
I can
This
go on
is what we
forever.
call
And
a
over.
market analysis.
let's do
Yeah,
this. Yes. And guess what? The government does it too. And this is what I
Yeah.
teach everybody to do because it's a market analysis. And so when I sit there and I look at businesses and go, oh, do you have past performance? And they're like, oh, yeah, I got plenty of past performance in the government. I'm like, let's find out. This is how it goes. And I can go, you're full of shit unless you can prove to me otherwise. And you'll be surprised how many people think they're a subcontractor. I mean, yeah, they're doing business, but they're a subcontractor. They're relying on the prime to provide information and
Yeah.
what to do.
and I will say that if they're a named subcontractor on a contract that included a subcontracting plan, the system will also give you that information too.
Yeah.
So
Actually, yes, it will. And if
I
it's over
know.
$35,000, they're supposed to report it by October 31st of every year. There's a clause of, does everybody do it? And let's be honest, no.
Now, there's a lot of well, there's exceptions to every rule. I mean, we kind of know that. That's
Yep. Oh, nobody
that's no
cares until
fun.
you say something. I mean, that's the biggest thing. It's when does somebody say something?
Speaking of saying something, um, anyone want to talk about that precedent that was just set? I feel like it was such a big decision and something I see so often that I would be silly not to mention it during our session tonight. So there was a recent protest at GAO. I mean, the decision was issued, and the situation was after the bid was submitted or the proposal was submitted, and
Oh,
before the award, the contractor SAM lapsed for like 2 days from what I understand. Now, I haven't read all of the documents yet, but GAO ruled in the favor of the protester, and that company lost the contract because they let their SAM lapse for 2 days during the competition cycle.
Wow.
Guys, do not wait until the 11th hour to renew your SAM. If y'all are bidding, you should be renewing quarterly. I will die on that hill. I will. That's a
yeah.
stupid reason to just throw 80 hours of wasted time down the drain.
Oh, there's so many ways to protest a company. You and I've talked in the past. I've been in a couple lawsuits. I've won, I've lost. I've helped companies win and lose, and it sucks. At the end of the day, when you have a judge or a jury making a decision, what side of the bed do they wake up on? At the end of the day, I mean, one case could be dead right. You have a whole different judge, and they have a whole different opinion. So when I tell anybody you decide to go sue, flip a coin because you don't know how it's going to go.
That's true.
I'm just being honest. So when you work with a company, do your due diligence, have that agreement in place, because good faith doesn't mean shit. I'm sorry to be very upfront. There's very few companies that operate on hey, I'm here in good faith.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the case.
Sadly.
It is very.
It's
It
sad,
was
yes.
so great having you here. Thank
I
you
know.
for joining us today. I know we went way over, but that's okay. I certainly don't mind. That was really good stuff. And I had to throw that protest in there. I couldn't even imagine. I mean, myself, I've gone in there 4 times already this year, and it's only the beginning of April. I have updated my registration 4 times already. Now, that was because there was something change I wanted to make, a code I wanted to add or whatnot. But yeah, I had to make sure to squeeze that in there at the last minute. So I can't wait to plan another session and have you back. If you're willing. We would love to have you. And we're gonna go ahead and call it an evening, guys. Thank you all for joining us. We are gonna be back next Thursday, and Natasha and I are gonna be talking about 5 ways to leverage AI in government contracting, and a lot of that has to do with your proposal strategy. So we look forward to talking with you then, everyone.
Bye, guys. Have